Hey there. Are you where you want to be? And I'm not talking about are you sitting on a beach somewhere or out in the woods somewhere or something like that of where you want to be, in your environment. That's not the kind of where I'm talking about. Are you where you want to be in your life with what you're doing with your life, with how you are living? And if you're not happy with where you are and what is going on in your life, I want to talk to you today about embracing the change, specifically of what I'm going to call your inputs. Recently, I spoke to you about how magnificent you are. Do you know how magnificent you are? I talk many times about warrior mindset, about taking ownership, great concepts, and I explain them. Do you realize that you are where you are now because of what you have done before? You're very powerful whether you realize it or not. The words that come out of our mouth affect our lives. I've heard these things many times before. And sometimes we have to hear things multiple times to really get it, to understand. Think about a child who learns multiplication tables. It's done through repetition. And that's okay. That's how we learn. We learn through repetition. We have to learn things over and over again, which leads right to what I talked about called inputs. What are you feeding on? What are the things that you watch? What are the things you listen to? How do you talk to yourself? Yes, we all talk to ourselves, whether you will admit it or not. We all talk to ourselves, whether it's audibly or whether we do it in our heads. We all talk to ourselves. Those are what is an input because it's going into us. We're putting it in ourselves. It's an input. And we hear lots of cliches and lines, and sometimes we can get lost in those. For example, garbage in, garbage out. That was a line when my children were growing up. I had not heard it before. After a while, we lose the meaning of these things. We have to find a new way of putting it. Hence the word input. What are you putting in yourself? Your input. If you put information in your computer in the search box on Google, you're going to get what Google thinks you're saying. If you plant tomato seeds in your garden, you're going to get tomatoes. You're not going to get green beans. It's the same with us. We don't do this perfect all the time, but the good news is we can continually change it. We can embrace the change of what we feed on. If you're like, oh, well, I watch the news a lot. Is that all right? How does it make you feel when you're done watching it? Do you feel encouraged and elated, or do you feel deflated and depressed, maybe even fearful? That's a little clue. That's the fruit of what you're feeding on. Movies that you watch, what do they make you feel? Do you feed on things that scare you? Well, you're feeding fear into yourself. You're putting fear in there, input. And this all sounds scientific and psychological and many things like that can get lost in our head. And I know that happened to me. So that's why I want to share this with you. I've told you already numerous times about the book I'm reading, because I'm always reading a book, usually multiple books. And I'm reading Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess by Dr. Caroline Leaf. In the part I'm in, I'm learning about thoughts in the mind. Of course, the whole thing's about the mind. Talking about the non-conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and the conscious mind. 3 different parts of the mind. When we do our inputs on purpose, with intention, we feed things into that non-conscious mind. It's like the back where everything takes place. I shared things with you when I was talking about magnificence, about in the mind and all the thoughts and the phenomenal power of our mind I'm learning in this book. I want to read you one sentence in here and I want you to think about it. Intelligent thinking happens at about 1 million actions per second in the non-conscious mind. That's a lot. Intelligent thinking is taking place in that non-conscious part. The conscious is where you're thinking and choosing and believing, and you're aware of that. It's called conscious because we're aware of it. The subconscious are those underlying things that we, like she calls it, the tip of your tongue. We've heard that before. But the non-conscious, we tend to think it's not there. It's there. It's the biggest part of our mind. And that's where we can bring about the change. If you're not where you want to be, feed on purpose things of where you want to go. Input where you want to go on purpose, with intention. You feed on that through speaking to yourself, through watching things of where you want to go. What is it that you want to change? Is it how you think about yourself? Is it what you do for a living? Is it you're sad and depressed all the time? Is it you're unhappy in your relationships? You can feed on different things in all of these different areas. And if you don't know where to start, a coach would be a great place to start. And that's something I can help you with. I help my clients with that. Help you find your starting point. You're lost in the pile. Help you find your starting point. And for you to make your choices to go where you want to go, because it's your life. You get one life, and it's up to you how you live it. And if you're like, oh, I know what I need to change. Well, change those inputs. If you want to change what you do for a living, start studying what you want to do. Start feeding on that. Feed that dream in your heart. If you want to change how you're feeling all the time, feed yourself on positive things. Another thing in this book about the non-conscious mind, people tend to think that it's always negative. It was fascinating. She says here, the non-conscious mind is more focused on the good stuff, like our happiness, excitement, joy, and passion. Maybe grab a copy of Dr. Caroline Leaf's book. But if you're not where you want to be in life, I want to encourage you to embrace the change. You have to change your inputs. You have to be feeding on where you want to be going, not where you were. You may need to address what's behind you. We have rear view mirrors in the car for a reason. We have the side view mirrors in the car for the reason. We glance there. We need that information to process where we're going. And that's what coaching is about, going forward. If you need to really address the backward view, you need to get a therapist. You need to get a counselor. And I encourage you to do that if that's where you need to embrace the change. Embrace the change so that you can be where you want to be. Because I want you to thrive. You deserve to thrive. I love you. I'm Danielle Burnock from DanielleBurnock.com. Love yourself from Survive to Thrive, that lady on the internet who loves you. Till next time, I love you.